Hello, welcome to the Price Academy bite-sized history videos. This video is introducing Lady Margaret Beaufort. Lady Margaret Beaufort was the matriarch of the Tudor dynasty and was also the Countess of Richmond and Derby. She was born at Bletsoe Castle in Bedfordshire on the 31st of May 1443. She was the daughter of Margaret Beauchamp of Bletsoe and John Beaufort, the 1st Duke of Somerset. He was the grandson of John of Gaunt and his mistress, Catherine Swynford. Margaret was their only child, and although an Act of Parliament legitimised the children of John of Gaunt and Catherine Swynford, Henry IV declared that they could never inherit the throne. Margaret's father died shortly before her first birthday, and she was brought up by her mother. Her mother instilled in her a strong sense of personal destiny and family pride. Margaret was married 4 times, firstly to John de la Pole in around 1450, and she was aged around 8 years old. This was dissolved in 1453. Some say this was just a betrothal and was never a marriage. Secondly, she was married to Edmund Tudor, the 1st Earl of Richmond, in 1453, aged 12. Edmund was the eldest son of Owen Tudor and half-brother of Henry VI. Margaret had just one child, Henry VII. She gave birth to him, aged 13, on the 28th of January 1457. She gave birth at Pembroke Castle in West Wales, as you can see here. His father was Edmund Tudor, who sadly died of plague before the baby was born. Margaret had a painful birth and would never bear another child. The young widow was forced to seek the protection of Edmund's brother Jasper, who wanted to name the baby Owen after his own father, but Margaret at the baptism gave him the name Henry. Aged 13, in March 1547, Margaret struck a bargain with the Duke of Buckingham, agreeing to marry his second son, Henry Stafford. By March 1461, Edward IV was the king, after winning victory at Towton over Henry. His first move was to grant wardship of Henry Tudor to William Lord Herbert. This separated Margaret from her son. He was brought up at Raglan Castle, and Margaret kept in touch via messages and occasional visits. The War of the Roses saw Margaret on the Lancastrian side. Henry was briefly reinstated in 1470 as king. When she visited him at court, he told Margaret that Margaret's son would heal the divisions of war. By March 1471, Edward IV returned from exile with a fresh army. Margaret and her husband decided the Lancastrian forces were not strong enough to prevail, and Stafford joined Edward's army. Victories at Tewkesbury in May 1471 re-established Edward on the throne. Henry VI was certainly murdered on Edward's order after this, and all of Margaret's male Beaufort cousins were killed. Her husband died of battle wounds also. Her son Henry in Wales with Lancastrian Jasper Tudor fled to exile in Brittany. In June 1472, Margaret negotiated a marriage alliance with Thomas Stanley, the steward of Edward IV's household. By the summer of 1482, Margaret had brokered an agreement with Edward that her son could return to England and marry one of his daughters, but the king died on April 9, 1483, before that could be put into effect. King Edward's son and heir was now recognised as Edward V. Richard, Duke of Gloucester, who was Edward IV's younger brother, was put in charge as protectorate, but he announced his brother's marriage to Elizabeth Woodville was invalid and the couple's sons were illegitimate. The Duke of Gloucester claimed the throne himself, and he became Richard III on the 6th of July 1483. Edward and Richard were placed in a tower by their uncle, and Elizabeth Woodville sought sanctuary at Westminster Abbey with her daughters. Margaret initially supported the coronation of Richard III, but then changed tack, organising a rebellion involving her husband, Henry Stafford, the Duke of Buckingham, and the Woodvilles, and decided that they would be supported by an invasion force by Jasper and Henry from Brittany. The rising collapsed as her husband could not cross the river, and Margaret was deprived of all lands and servants. She was only spared execution because of her husband's continued loyalty to Richard III. In the summer of 1485, Margaret's luck changed as her son landed in Wales. Margaret strongly supported her son Henry Tudor's claim to the throne and was able to persuade her husband Thomas Stanley and his brother to swap sides and support Henry at the Battle of Bosworth fields. Henry defeated Richard III and became Henry VII of England. Margaret and Elizabeth Woodville plotted the marriage of Henry to Elizabeth of York, who was Elizabeth Woodville's daughter. After her son's victory at Bosworth, Margaret was referred to as My Lady the King's Mother and refused to accept a lower status than the Queen Consort Elizabeth of York. Margaret took an active interest in education and established the Lady Margaret's Professorship of Divinity at Cambridge University. She also refounded and added to God's House, Cambridge, turning it into Christ's College. Lady Margaret Beaufort died on the 29th of June 1509, aged 66. She died 4 days after enjoying the coronation of her grandson Henry VIII. She is buried at Westminster Abbey in London. Don't forget, if you enjoyed this video, to like and subscribe to the channel. You can follow me at Twitter or at Facebook at TanyaAlex38.